The humiliation. Sophia Reeves was not one for extravagance. Despite being married to one of the most beloved actors in the world, Keanu Reeves, she lived a simple life, preferring quiet bookstores over Hollywood parties and meaningful conversations over red carpet glitz. She never flaunted her wealth, never craved attention, and certainly never sought validation through material possessions. But today was special. It was her wedding anniversary, and she wanted to surprise Keanu with something meaningful, a token of love that would symbolize the years they had shared. With a warm smile and a hopeful heart, she stepped into Celestine Jewelers, one of the most exclusive luxury jewelry boutiques in Beverly Hills. The moment she entered, the store exuded an air of elegance and opulence. Gleaming display cases held rare diamonds, sapphires, and pearls worth small fortunes. Chandeliers cast a golden glow over deep mahogany counters, and an aroma of expensive perfume and polished leather filled the air. Sophia, dressed in a simple beige cardigan, faded jeans, and white sneakers, didn't look the part of a typical Celestine customer. Her hair was tied up in a loose bun, her face free of makeup, and she carried a modest leather purse. To anyone who didn't know her, she looked like an average woman. Certainly not someone who could afford anything in this store. She wandered over to a display showcasing a beautiful platinum ring with an engraved inscription on the inside. It was simple, not ostentatious, but something about it felt right. It reminded her of Keanu's love, pure, strong, and timeless. She leaned in, admiring the delicate craftsmanship, when a sharp voice shattered the tranquility. "Excuse me, ma'am." A woman in a sleek black suit and sky-high stilettos sneered, her tone laced with condescension. "I believe you may be in the wrong store." Sophia turned to see Victoria Hastings, a tall, impeccably dressed sales associate with an expression of thinly veiled distaste. Her dark red lipstick was perfectly applied, her golden hair styled into an immaculate bun. Everything about her screamed wealth and exclusivity. No, I was just admiring this ring," Sophia replied, offering a polite smile. Victoria's eyes flicked over Sophia's outfit, a slow, judgmental scan that ended with an unimpressed smirk. "That particular collection starts at $40,000, she said flatly, "and we require an appointment for serious buyers." Sophia blinked in surprise. "Oh, I didn't realize. I'd love to try it on, if that's okay." Victoria exhaled, an exaggerated sigh, as if dealing with Sophia was beneath her. With deliberate slowness, she reached for the ring, but didn't hand it over. Instead, she held it between her fingers and looked at Sophia skeptically. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This is not the kind of jewelry people just try on for fun." A few nearby customers, women draped in designer clothes and dripping in diamonds, paused their shopping to observe the scene. One of them, a middle-aged woman with a Prada handbag, chuckled under her breath. "Poor thing probably thinks it's cubic zirconia," she whispered to her friend. Heat crept up Sophia's neck, but she remained composed. "I understand," she said gently. "I'd still like to see how it looks." Reluctantly, Victoria handed over the ring, but not without a scoff. "Just be careful. We don't want to smudge it." Sophia slipped the ring onto her finger, her heart swelling at how perfectly it fit. It wasn't about the price. It was about what it represented. She could already picture Keanu's smile when she gave it to him, how his eyes would crinkle at the corners, how he would kiss her hand in that affectionate way he always did. Victoria, however, was not impressed. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "that's quite a contrast. The ring is exquisite." But she trailed off, giving Sophia's attire another once-over. "I suppose beauty is subjective." Laughter rippled through the store. Sophia's smile faltered. "I'd like to purchase it," she said, ignoring the snickers around her. Victoria arched a perfectly sculpted brow. "With what, exactly?" she asked, voice tripping with sarcasm. "No offense, but our items are a bit out of reach for window shoppers." Sophia's hands curled into fists, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I have a credit card," she said evenly. I can pay for it." Victoria let out an exaggerated laugh, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, honey, I'm sure you do, but we don't accept just any card. Our clientele typically shops with private bankers, not debit cards from budget banks." The other women in the store chuckled again. The humiliation was palpable, pressing down on Sophia like a weight. She could have easily dropped Keanu's name. She could have pulled out her exclusive black card and proved them all wrong. But that wasn't who she was. She had never used her husband's fame or wealth as a shield. She took a deep breath and removed the ring, placing it gently on the counter. "Thank you for your time," she said quietly. As she turned to leave, she caught her reflection in the store's grand mirror. Her eyes held a sadness she didn't like. Just as she reached the door, Victoria called after her, "Next time, try the department store down the street. They have more affordable options." Laughter echoed behind her as Sophia stepped onto the bustling Beverly Hills sidewalk. She walked for a while, letting the fresh air cool the sting of humiliation. The city lights blurred as she blinked away tears she didn't want to shed. It wasn't about the money. It was about how people treated one another, about how quickly they judged based on appearances. Little did Victoria know, the woman she had just ridiculed was not only married to Keanu Reeves, but was about to change her life in ways she could never imagine. The revelation. Sophia walked through the front door of their cozy Los Angeles home, the faint scent of sandalwood and old books wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. The house wasn't ostentatious by Hollywood standards, no sprawling mansions or crystal chandeliers. It was warm, filled with mismatched furniture, walls lined with shelves of well-loved novels, and art from local street artists. It reflected both her and Keanu's shared love for simplicity and authenticity. She placed her purse gently on the wooden console table, her fingers brushing the worn leather, like it might anchor her swirling emotions. The laughter from the jewelry store still echoed in her mind, clashing with the warmth of home. She tried to shake it off, but the sting lingered. In the living room, Keanu was curled up on the couch, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose as he thumbed through a tattered copy of The Brothers Karamazov. He looked up the moment he heard the door close, his face lighting up with that quiet, soulful smile he reserved just for her. "Hey, sunshine," he said, his voice low and comforting, like the strum of a familiar guitar chord. "You're back early." Sophia forced a smile, trying to hide the disappointment tugging at her heart. "Yeah, I guess I didn't find what I was looking for." She kicked off her sneakers, hoping he wouldn't notice the way her shoulders slumped. But Keanu Reeves was nothing if not observant. He closed his book, setting it gently on the coffee table, and gave her his full attention. "Something happened?" he asked, his brow furrowing in concern. Sophia hesitated. It wasn't that she didn't want to tell him. She just didn't want to seem petty. After all, it was just a rude salesperson, right? But the look in his eyes, that unwavering gentleness, made it impossible to keep it in. She walked over, sinking into the couch beside him, and rested her head on his shoulder. "I went to Celestine Jewelers," she began softly. "I thought maybe I'd find something special for our anniversary." Keanu smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "You're special enough," he murmured, kissing the top of her head. She chuckled, but it quickly faded. The saleswoman. She was awful, Keanu. Her voice trembled slightly, more from frustration than sadness. She looked at me like I didn't belong there. Made comments about how I couldn't afford anything. Laughed when I said I wanted to buy something. Keanu stiffened beneath her, his easygoing demeanor shifting subtly. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, the room was heavy with silence. He wasn't the kind of man who let fame get to his head, but hearing that someone had disrespected Sophia, his Sophia, was a different matter entirely. "She humiliated you?" he asked quietly, though his voice carried an edge that Sophia rarely heard. Sophia nodded, sitting up to meet his gaze. "I didn't tell her who I was, or who you are. I didn't see the point. I felt small, Keanu. Like I wasn't good enough to be in that store." She swallowed hard, the memory still fresh and raw. It wasn't about the jewelry. It was about how easily people judge you based on how you look. Keanu's dark eyes softened, but the tension in his shoulders remained. He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "You are more than enough, Sophia. You always have been." She smiled faintly, but Keanu could see it wasn't reaching her eyes. For a long moment he sat there, his mind working quietly behind those thoughtful eyes. Keanu wasn't one for dramatic confrontations or using his celebrity status to belittle others. But this wasn't about ego. This was about respect, about kindness. And if there was one thing Keanu Reeves believed in, it was treating people with decency, no matter who they were. "What was her name?" he asked finally, his voice calm but resolute. Sophia blinked. "Who?" "The saleswoman." Sophia hesitated. She knew that look in his eyes, not anger, but something deeper, a quiet resolve. "Victoria," she said softly. "Victoria Hastings." Keanu repeated the name in his head, committing it to memory. Then he stood, stretching slightly before heading toward his desk in the corner of the room. He rifled through a drawer until he found what he was looking for, a sleek, black invitation embossed with gold lettering. Sophia watched him curiously. "What's that?" Keanu turned, holding up the invitation with a small smile. "Celestine Jewelers is hosting a private gala this weekend. Exclusive event, VIP clients only." His smile widened, just slightly, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "I think it's time we attended." Sophia's eyes widened. "Keanu, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to." He walked back over, taking her hands in his. "But I want to. Not to embarrass her, but to remind people like Victoria that kindness doesn't cost a thing." Sophia stared at him, her heart swelling with love. This was the man she had fallen in love with, not just because of his fame or his talent, but because of his unwavering integrity. He didn't seek revenge. He sought to make things right. "Are you sure?" she whispered. Keanu leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. "For you? Always." The next few days passed in a blur. Sophia tried to put the incident behind her, but Keanu was quietly working in the background, making arrangements. He contacted Celestine's owner, an old acquaintance from years past, ensuring their attendance at the gala. But he didn't mention the incident. Not yet. On the night of the event, Sophia stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple, elegant black dress Keanu had chosen for her. She still felt a little nervous about the whole thing, but his reassurance echoed in her mind. Keanu appeared behind her, dressed in a tailored suit that fit him like a glove. He wasn't one for flashy fashion, but tonight, he looked every bit the Hollywood star he was. Yet his eyes remained soft when they met hers in the mirror. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. Sophia took a deep breath, then nodded, sliding her fingers into his. "Ready." As they stepped out into the cool night, hand in hand, Sophia didn't know exactly what Keanu had planned. But she trusted him. And deep down, she knew this wasn't just about a rude saleswoman. It was about standing up for dignity, for respect. And as they drove toward the glittering lights of Beverly Hills, neither of them could have predicted just how powerful the night would become, not just for Victoria, but for everyone who witnessed what was about to unfold. The quiet plan. The night of the gala arrived with all the glitter and glamour one would expect from an event hosted by Celestine Jewelers. The boutique had spared no expense, transforming its already lavish showroom into a shimmering palace of light and luxury. Crystal chandeliers cascaded from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, while velvet drapes in deep royal blue framed the room, giving it an air of regal sophistication. The scent of rare white orchids mingled with the faint aroma of aged champagne, and the gentle hum of a string quartet filled the space, providing a delicate soundtrack to the evening's opulence. Sophia sat in the car beside Keanu, her fingers lightly grazing the smooth fabric of her simple black dress. She had opted for elegance over extravagance, Her only accessory a delicate silver pendant Keanu had given her years ago, when they'd first started dating. It was a piece that held more value in sentiment than in price, a stark contrast to the flashy diamonds and gemstones she knew would adorn the other guests tonight. Keanu, ever the calm presence, sat with one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting gently on her knee. He wasn't one for grand plans or elaborate schemes, but tonight was different. Tonight wasn't about making a scene. It was about delivering a message, one that would linger longer than any public confrontation could. "You sure about this?" Sophia asked, her voice soft but steady. Keanu glanced at her, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Positive, and he was. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reminding people of something simple, something fundamental: kindness. It was about standing up for Sophia, but also about giving the woman who had humiliated her a chance to see the world differently. As they approached the entrance of Celestine Jewelers, the couple was met with the soft flash of cameras and the subtle murmur of recognition. Keanu Reeves was a name that needed no introduction. He was known not just for his iconic roles, but for his humility and kindness, traits that made him as beloved off-screen as he was on. The doorman, momentarily stunned by the unexpected arrival of the Hollywood legend, quickly recovered and ushered them inside. Sophia felt the weight of the room's attention shift as they stepped into the golden glow of the showroom. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned, and whispers rippled through the crowd like waves. "Is that Keanu Reeves? What's he doing here? Who's the woman with him?" Sophia could feel the stares, but Keanu's hand in hers grounded her. He led her through the crowd with his usual understated grace, his presence alone enough to part the sea of guests. But Sophia's eyes weren't on the glittering jewels or the curious onlookers. They were searching for her. And there she was, Victoria Hastings, standing behind one of the glass counters, dressed in an even sleeker suit than before, her posture exuding the same arrogance Sophia had encountered days earlier. She was laughing with a wealthy couple, her voice a soft purr of practiced charm, her eyes scanning the room for her next target. But the moment her gaze landed on Keanu Reeves, something shifted. Her smile faltered. For a brief second, confusion clouded her features as her eyes darted from Keanu to Sophia and back again. Recognition flickered, first of the Hollywood star, then of the woman she had so callously dismissed. And just like that, the color drained from Victoria's face. Keanu, ever the master of subtlety, didn't march over or make a scene. Instead, he guided Sophia through the room, engaging in polite conversation with other guests, all while keeping Victoria within his peripheral vision. He wasn't here to humiliate her in front of everyone. No, that would be too easy. Keanu believed in something deeper, letting people confront their own mistakes in the quiet spaces of their conscience. After circulating the room for a while, Keanu led Sophia to a quieter corner near an exclusive showcase, a special collection that was to be unveiled later in the evening. They sipped their champagne, their conversation light and easy, though both were acutely aware of Victoria's growing discomfort. And then the moment arrived. The owner of Celestine Jewelers, a tall, distinguished man named Edward Celestine, took the stage to welcome the guests. His voice echoed through the room, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a celebration of timeless elegance and unparalleled craftsmanship. But it's also a celebration of the people who inspire us, those who remind us that beauty is not just in what we wear, but in how we treat one another." Keanu's eyes met Sophia's, a knowing look passing between them. Edward had no idea how prophetic his words would be tonight. After Edward's speech, the staff began circulating the room with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Keanu leaned in, his voice a soft whisper in Sophia's ear. "It's time." Sophia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest, not out of fear but anticipation. Keanu approached Edward Celestine with his trademark humility, greeting him with a warm handshake. The two exchanged pleasantries, their conversation easy and familiar. And then Keanu made his request. "Edward," he began, his tone casual but firm, "my wife and I were hoping for a more personal experience tonight. Could you arrange for someone to show us your private collection?" Edward, eager to please his high-profile guest, nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, Keanu. I'll have one of my best associates assist you." And just like that, fate sealed its quiet plan. Edward turned to the nearest staff member and motioned for them to call over Victoria. When Victoria approached, her face was a mask of professionalism, but the tension in her posture betrayed her. Her eyes flickered nervously between Edward and Keanu, and for a brief moment, Sophia saw a glimmer of vulnerability beneath the polished exterior. "Victoria," Edward said, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, "please assist Mr. Reeves and his wife with a private viewing of our newest collection." Victoria's lips parted, but no words came out. She swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Of course, Mr. Celestin," she managed, her voice slightly strained. "Right this way, Mr. Reeves, Mrs. Reeves." The formal title landed like a stone between them. Victoria's eyes met Sophia's, and in that moment, everything changed. The dismissive arrogance was gone, replaced by a flicker of something raw and unguarded: shame. As Victoria led them through the store, her steps were slower, her usual confidence tempered by the weight of unspoken truths. They entered a private room where the most exclusive pieces were displayed, the air thick with tension. Victoria began her rehearsed spiel, describing the intricate details of each piece, but her voice wavered. Keanu listened politely, his expression calm, but Sophia could see the subtle shift in his demeanor, the quiet intensity behind his eyes. When Victoria finally finished, Keanu set down the piece he was admiring and turned to her, his voice soft but deliberate. "You have a beautiful collection here," he said, his gaze steady. "But I wonder, do you always treat your customers the same way?" Victoria's breath hitched. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Sophia stepped forward, her voice gentle but unwavering. "I was in here a few days ago," she said softly. "I wanted to buy a ring. Do you remember me?" Victoria's face paled, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She nodded slowly, her eyes dropping to the floor. I didn't realize," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Keanu's expression didn't change. "Didn't realize what?" he asked quietly. "That she was my wife, or that she was a person who deserved respect." The question hung in the air, heavier than any diamond in the room. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, her polished facade crumbling. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to humiliate her," Keanu interrupted gently. "Or you didn't mean to get caught." Victoria's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. "I was wrong," she whispered. I don't have an excuse." Keanu nodded, his gaze softening just slightly. "We're not here for an apology," he said. "We're here to give you a chance to be better." Victoria looked up, confusion flickering in her tear-filled eyes. "There's a charity auction next month," Sophia explained, her voice warm but firm. "For underprivileged youth, we'd like you to help organize it. Not because we need you to, but because maybe you need it." Victoria blinked, the offer sinking in. And in that quiet, private room, the real plan unfolded, not one of revenge, but of redemption. Because sometimes the most powerful lessons aren't the loudest. They're the ones that make us look inward, that force us to confront who we are and who we could be. The shocking moment. The weeks following the gala passed like a surreal blur for Victoria Hastings. She couldn't shake the memory of that night, the piercing calm in Keanu Reeves' eyes, the gentle yet unwavering strength in Sophia's voice. It was as if they had seen right through her carefully crafted facade, peeling back the layers of arrogance and exposing the insecurity she had buried deep inside. For the first time in years, Victoria felt truly seen, but not in the glamorous, attention-grabbing way she was accustomed to. No, This was different. She had been seen for who she really was, a woman who had let her ambition and pride overshadow her humanity. And now, here she was, standing in the grand hall of the Aurora Foundation charity auction, an event she had reluctantly agreed to help organize. The venue was a stunning, glass-walled structure overlooking the city skyline, bathed in the warm glow of twilight. But instead of feeling proud of the elegant setting she had helped create, Victoria felt a gnawing anxiety deep in her chest. She wasn't here for the glitz tonight. She was here to face her past, and, unknowingly, her future. The evening began smoothly enough. The city's elite trickled in, dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits, their conversations a hum of polite chatter and laughter. Waiters weaved through the crowd with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, and a jazz quartet played softly in the background. Victoria moved among the guests with practiced ease, her smile perfectly in place, but her heart wasn't in it. She kept glancing toward the entrance, waiting for them. And then they arrived. Keanu Reeves entered the hall with Sophia by his side, their presence commanding attention without even trying. The crowd's murmur shifted as people recognized the Hollywood icon, but Keanu remained unfazed, offering warm, polite nods to those who approached. Sophia looked radiant, her beauty understated yet captivating. She wore a simple, elegant dress in a deep emerald green that complemented her warm skin tone and brought out the spark in her eyes. But it wasn't her appearance that struck Victoria. It was her presence. Sophia exuded a quiet confidence, a grace that didn't demand attention but commanded respect. Victoria's stomach twisted. She had humiliated this woman. And yet, here she was, walking into the room as if nothing had ever happened, as if she carried no bitterness in her heart. Keanu's eyes met Victoria's across the room, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. He didn't glare. He didn't frown. He simply looked at her, his expression unreadable but aware. It was that same calm, piercing gaze from the jewelry store, the one that made Victoria feel like he could see right through her. She turned away, pretending to adjust a centerpiece on one of the auction tables, but her hands trembled slightly. As the night progressed, Victoria found herself avoiding Keanu and Sophia as much as possible, focusing instead on the logistics of the event. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The auction was the centerpiece of the evening, a fundraising effort for underprivileged youth, with all proceeds going toward educational scholarships and community programs. Victoria had spent weeks coordinating with donors and curating the items up for bid, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. The auctioneer, a charismatic man with a booming voice, took the stage, drawing the crowd's attention to the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight in support of the Aurora Foundation. We have some incredible items up for bid this evening, but first, he paused for dramatic effect, his eyes scanning the crowd before landing on Keanu. We have a special surprise. A ripple of curiosity moved through the guests as the auctioneer continued. We're honored to have a very special guest with us tonight, someone whose generosity and commitment to this cause have inspired us all. Please welcome to the stage, Keanu Reeves. The room erupted in applause as Keanu made his way to the stage, his every step effortless, exuding that quiet, magnetic charm he was famous for. But for Victoria, the applause sounded distant, muffled by the pounding of her heart in her ears. Keanu took the microphone, his smile warm but humble. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady and sincere. "It's an honor to be here tonight, supporting such an important cause. Education is the foundation of opportunity, and every child deserves the chance to learn, grow, and dream without limits." The crowd hung on his every word, but Victoria could barely breathe. "But tonight," Keanu continued, "I'd like to share a story." Victoria's stomach dropped. "A few weeks ago," he said, his eyes scanning the room before briefly meeting Sophia's gaze, "someone very dear to me had an experience that reminded me how easy it is to forget the power of kindness. She walked into a store, hoping to find a gift. not because of its price, but because of the love it symbolized. But instead of being met with respect, she was judged by her appearance and treated as if she didn't belong. A hush fell over the room. Victoria felt like the walls were closing in. Her breathing quickened, and she gripped the edge of a nearby table, her knuckles turning white. Keanu's voice softened, but it carried the weight of truth. "We all make mistakes," he continued. "We've all had moments when we've let our assumptions get the better of us. But what defines us isn't the mistakes we make. It's how we choose to grow from them." Victoria's eyes welled with tears. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she had never experienced before. "Tonight," Keanu said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, "I'm not here to call out anyone. I'm here to celebrate the opportunity for redemption. The chance to be better, kinder, more compassionate." He paused, letting the words settle. "Because at the end of the day, it's not the jewelry we wear or the cars we drive that define us. It's the way we treat the people around us, whether they're wearing designer clothes or a simple pair of jeans." The room erupted into applause once more, but Victoria felt like she was sinking. The words weren't just a general message. They were a mirror, reflecting everything she had tried to ignore about herself. After Keanu left the stage, the auction resumed, but Victoria could barely focus. She watched as guests bid on rare art pieces and luxury vacations, their laughter and excitement filling the room. But all she could hear were Keanu's words echoing in her mind. And then, the final item of the night was unveiled. A simple platinum ring. The very ring Sophia had tried to buy at Celestine Jewelers. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. "Our final item tonight," the auctioneer announced, "is a donation from Mr. and Mrs. Reeves. A symbol of love, humility, and second chances. All proceeds from this piece will go directly toward funding scholarships for young women in need." The room fell silent for a moment before the bidding began. Each paddle raised a reminder of the impact one small act of kindness could have. Victoria couldn't take it anymore. She stepped away from the crowd, her heart racing, her mind spinning. She needed air, space, something. But before she could slip out, a soft voice stopped her. "Victoria." She turned to find Sophia standing there, her expression gentle but resolute. For a moment, neither of them spoke. And then, with tears brimming in her eyes, Victoria whispered the words she had been too proud to say for far too long. "I'm sorry." Sophia smiled softly, her eyes filled with something Victoria hadn't expected. "Forgiveness." "I know," she said quietly, "but now it's time to show it." And with that, Sophia walked back toward Keanu, leaving Victoria standing alone, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. But for the first time, she felt the faintest spark of hope. Because sometimes the most shocking moments aren't the ones that embarrass us. They're the ones that change us. The chance for redemption. The following morning, Victoria Hastings sat at her small kitchen table, the events of the charity auction replaying in her mind like a film she couldn't turn off. Her sleek, modern apartment, which once felt like a symbol of her success, now felt cold, sterile, and suffocating. The minimalist decor, the designer furniture, the carefully curated art on the walls. It all seemed meaningless now. None of it could drown out the echoes of Keanu Reeves' words or the gentle forgiveness in Sophia's eyes. Victoria had spent years climbing the social ladder, measuring her worth by the labels she wore and the circles she moved in. She had believed that status and wealth were the ultimate markers of success, but last night had shattered that illusion. The humiliation she had felt at the gala wasn't just about being exposed. It was about being seen for who she really was, a woman who had lost touch with the simplest, most essential human value, kindness. She pushed her untouched coffee aside and buried her face in her hands. The guilt was overwhelming, but beneath it, a question lingered. Could she change? And if so, how? Her phone buzzed on the table, snapping her out of her thoughts. She hesitated before picking it up, her heart pounding when she saw the message. *Dear Victoria, Keanu and I believe in second chances. We've seen firsthand how powerful they can be. If you're open to it, we'd like to offer you an opportunity, not just to make amends, but to truly make a difference. There's a mentorship program at the Aurora Foundation for young women who come from underprivileged backgrounds. They need guidance, support, and someone to show them that success isn't just about wealth. It's about character. If you're willing, we'd like you to lead the program *. Let us know. Warm regards, Sophia *. Victoria stared at the screen, her emotions a tangled mess of disbelief, gratitude, and fear. Lead a mentorship program. She barely felt capable of mentoring herself, let alone a group of young women. But as she read the message again, she realized this wasn't just about helping others. It was about finding her own path to redemption. With a deep breath, she typed a response. *Dear Sophia, thank you for your forgiveness and for this chance. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, but I want to try. I'll meet you at the Aurora Foundation tomorrow morning. Sincerely, Victoria *. The next day arrived faster than she anticipated. Victoria found herself standing in front of the Aurora Foundation's community center, a modest building nestled between towering skyscrapers in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't flashy or grand, but it radiated warmth and purpose. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, unsure of what to expect. The moment she entered, she was greeted by the sound of laughter and chatter. The walls were adorned with colorful murals painted by the very youth the foundation supported. Photos of past events and success stories lined the hallways, a testament to the lives that had been changed within these walls. Sophia was waiting for her in the main room, dressed casually in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked every bit the approachable, kind-hearted woman Victoria had come to admire. *Victoria,* Sophia greeted her warmly, extending a hand. Victoria shook it, feeling a surge of gratitude that words couldn't express. *Thank you for coming,* Sophia continued, leading her toward a group of young women gathered in a circle. "I know this isn't easy, but I believe you're exactly where you're meant to be." Victoria swallowed hard, her nerves threatening to overwhelm her. But as she approached the group, she saw something unexpected in their eyes. Curiosity, not judgment. These young women didn't know her past. They didn't see the mistakes she had made. They saw a blank slate, a chance for something new. Sophia introduced her to the group. "Everyone, this is Victoria. She's here to share her experiences and help guide you on your own paths to success." Victoria felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders, but instead of fear, she felt a spark of determination. She wasn't here to pretend she had all the answers. She was here to be honest, to learn alongside them. The first few sessions were challenging. Victoria struggled to connect with the girls, who came from vastly different backgrounds than her own. They were skeptical, guarded, and rightfully so. Many of them had faced hardships Victoria couldn't even begin to imagine. Poverty, broken homes, systemic obstacles that made her struggles in the luxury retail world seem trivial in comparison. But Victoria didn't give up. She shared her story with them. Not the polished, curated version she had told at networking events, but the raw, unfiltered truth. She spoke about her obsession with status, her mistakes, and the painful realization that success without kindness was hollow. She admitted her faults, her regrets, and most importantly, her desire to change. Slowly, the walls began to come down. One by one, the girls opened up about their own challenges and dreams. They shared their fears of failure, their struggles with self-worth, and their hopes for a better future. Victoria listened, really listened, and for the first time in a long time, she felt connected to something bigger than herself. Weeks turned into months, and the mentorship program flourished. Victoria watched in awe as the girls grew more confident, more determined. They pursued internships, applied for scholarships, and supported each other through every setback and success. Their resilience inspired her, fueling her own transformation. But it wasn't just the girls who changed. Victoria found herself reevaluating every aspect of her life. She started volunteering outside the mentorship program, dedicating her time to causes that mattered. She reconnected with old friends she had pushed away in her pursuit of status, and she even reached out to estranged family members, seeking to mend broken relationships. Through it all, Sophia and Keanu remained a quiet presence in her life, not as reminders of her past mistakes, but as beacons of the kindness and grace she aspired to embody. The day of the mentorship program's final showcase arrived, marking the culmination of months of hard work and growth. The community center buzzed with excitement as the girls prepared to present their projects and share their stories with family, friends, and supporters of the Aurora Foundation. Victoria stood at the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride as she watched the young women she had come to care for so deeply take the stage one by one. Their confidence, their passion, their resilience, it was all on full display, and Victoria knew that she had played a part in helping them get there. But the biggest surprise came at the end of the evening. As the final speaker stepped off the stage, Keanu approached the microphone, his presence commanding yet humble. "Before we close tonight's event," he began, his eyes scanning the room, "I'd like to take a moment to recognize someone who has made an incredible impact on this program." Victoria felt her heart skip a beat. She came to us at a time when she was facing her own challenges, but instead of letting her past define her, she chose to grow, to give back, and to lead with kindness. She has not only mentored these young women, but has also shown us all the power of redemption. Keanu's eyes found Victoria's in the crowd, and he smiled. "Victoria Hastings, would you please come up here?" The room erupted in applause, and for a moment, Victoria was frozen in place, overwhelmed by the recognition and support. But as the girls cheered her on, she felt a wave of warmth and courage wash over her. She made her way to the stage, her steps steady, her heart full. As she stood beside Keanu, he handed her a small plaque, a symbol of her journey and her transformation. Victoria took a deep breath, looking out at the faces of the young women she had mentored, the friends she had made, and the people who had given her a second chance. "Thank you," she began, her voice strong and clear. "Not just for this recognition, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. This journey has taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to lead with kindness. And I hope my story reminds you all that no matter where you come from or what mistakes you've made, you always have the power to make a difference in your own life and in the lives of others." The applause that followed wasn't just for her achievements. It was for her courage, her growth, and the person she had become. And as she stepped off the stage, Sophia was there to greet her, pulling her into a warm, genuine hug. "You did it," Sophia whispered, her eyes shining with pride. Victoria smiled, feeling the sense of peace she had never known before. "We did it," she replied. Because in the end, redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future defined by compassion, integrity, and the unwavering belief that it's never too late to choose kindness. The transformation, the recognition at the Aurora Foundation's mentorship showcase, wasn't the end of Victoria Hastings' story. It was just the beginning. Standing on that stage, surrounded by applause and the warmth of genuine acceptance, had been a revelation. But what followed was the true test of her transformation. For years, Victoria had defined herself by titles and accolades. Senior Sales Associate at Celestine Jewelers, luxury consultant for the elite. She had measured her worth in commissions and social status. But as she walked out of the community center that evening, plaque in hand, she realized those things had been mere decorations on an empty shelf. Now, she had something real: purpose. In the weeks that followed, Victoria fully immersed herself in the mentorship program. But it wasn't just about guiding young women anymore. It became about learning from them. Each of their stories, filled with resilience and hope, reflected the lessons she needed to embrace in her own life. She started to shed the layers of her old identity, piece by piece. The designer suits that once made her feel powerful began collecting dust in her closet. Instead, She opted for simpler, more comfortable clothing that allowed her to blend in rather than stand out. The expensive jewelry she used to flaunt felt heavy on her wrists and neck, reminders of a past she no longer wanted to cling to. But the biggest change wasn't in how she dressed. It was in how she lived. One morning, Victoria arrived at the Aurora Foundation early. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, casting a soft pink glow across the sky. She unlocked the doors and stepped into the quiet building, savoring the stillness before the day began. As she walked through the hallways, she paused in front of a mural painted by one of the mentees. It depicted a tree with deep roots and sprawling branches, each leaf inscribed with a word: hope, strength, courage, kindness. Victoria traced her fingers over the word kindness, feeling a lump rise in her throat. It had become her guiding principle, but embodying it wasn't always easy. Kindness required vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths, not just about the world, but about herself. That afternoon, as the mentorship group gathered in their usual circle, Victoria noticed a new face among the girls. She was younger than the others, with tightly coiled hair pulled into a messy bun and a guarded expression that spoke volumes. "Hi there," Victoria greeted gently, taking the seat beside her. "I'm Victoria. What's your name?" The girl hesitated, her eyes flicking to the other girls before settling on Victoria. "Ava," she mumbled. "It's nice to meet you, Ava," Victoria said with a warm smile. "We're just sharing a little about ourselves today. No pressure, though. Just listen if you'd like." Ava didn't respond, but she stayed, her posture stiff and defensive. Victoria recognized that look. It was the same one she'd worn for years, shielding herself from vulnerability. As the session continued, the girls spoke about their goals and recent achievements. Some had landed internships, others had applied for scholarships. When it was Victoria's turn to speak, she paused, glancing at Ava. "You know," she began softly, "I used to think success was about how much money you made or how many people knew your name. But I've learned that real success is about how you make people feel, and how you feel about yourself when no one's watching." Ava's eyes flickered with something, curiosity, maybe even skepticism, but it was a start. Later that evening, after the session had ended and the girls had gone home, Victoria stayed behind to organize some materials. She was gathering her things when she heard a soft voice behind her. "Hey." She turned to see Ava standing in the doorway, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her oversized hoodie. "Hi, Ava," Victoria replied, her tone gentle and inviting. "Everything okay?" Ava shrugged, kicking at the floor with the toe of her sneaker. "I guess. I don't know why you do this. Like, you don't have to be here, right? You could be doing something else." Victoria smiled, setting down the papers in her hands. "You're right. I could be doing something else. But I want to be here." Ava frowned, clearly unconvinced. "Why? You don't even know us." Victoria took a deep breath, her mind flashing back to her own journey. "Because someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it," she said honestly, "and it changed my life. I want to do the same for others. We all need someone to believe in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves." Ava was quiet for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Yeah, I guess." Victoria smiled again, sensing a breakthrough. "I'm here if you ever want to talk, Ava. No pressure." As Ava left, Victoria felt a warmth settle in her chest. It was moments like these, small, seemingly insignificant interactions, that marked the true transformation she was undergoing. She was no longer chasing after validation from the wealthy elite. She was building genuine connections, making a real difference. But transformation wasn't just about her work at the foundation. It seeped into every aspect of her life. Victoria found herself reevaluating her relationships too. She reached out to old friends she had distanced herself from in her pursuit of status. Some were hesitant at first, unsure if this new version of Victoria was genuine, but over time, her consistent efforts mended the cracks in those friendships. She even reconnected with her estranged younger sister, Emily, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. Their relationship had fractured when Victoria became too absorbed in her career, dismissing Emily's more modest, down-to-earth lifestyle. One evening, Victoria invited Emily over to her apartment. She cooked a simple dinner, nothing fancy, just homemade pasta and a salad, and they sat at the same kitchen table where Victoria had once agonized over her mistakes. "I'm sorry," Victoria said quietly, pushing her plate aside. "For everything. I was so focused on climbing the ladder that I forgot what really mattered. I miss having you in my life." Emily studied her for a moment, her expression softening. "I missed you too," she admitted, "but I'm glad you're finding your way back." They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about their childhood, laughing over old memories, and for the first time in years, Victoria felt truly at home. Months passed, and the mentorship program continued to thrive. Victoria saw incredible growth in the girls, but the most remarkable transformation was happening within herself. She no longer felt the need to prove her worth through material things. She found joy in the simple moments, walking through the park, sharing stories over coffee, and seeing the light in someone's eyes when they realized their potential. Her life was no longer defined by luxury brands and high-end clientele. It was defined by the impact she made, the relationships she nurtured, and the person she was becoming. One day, while preparing for another mentorship session, Victoria received a call from Edward Celestine, the owner of the luxury jewelry store where her journey of transformation had begun. "Victoria," Edward greeted warmly, "I've been hearing wonderful things about your work at the Aurora Foundation. We'd love to have you back at Celestine Jewelers, perhaps in a leadership role. You've always been one of our best." Victoria felt a wave of emotions. A year ago, she would have jumped at the opportunity. But now, she smiled, realizing how far she had come. "Thank you, Edward," she replied sincerely, "but I found my calling elsewhere. I'm exactly where I need to be." As she hung up the phone, Victoria felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. She looked around the community center, the colorful murals, the photos of the girls' achievements, the warmth that filled every corner, and knew she had made the right choice. Her transformation wasn't just about leaving behind her old life. It was about embracing a new one filled with purpose, authenticity, and kindness. And as the girls filed into the room, their laughter and energy filling the space, Victoria smiled, knowing that she was no longer the woman who had once humiliated Sophia Reeves. She was someone entirely new, someone better, the full circle of kindness. A year had passed since Victoria Hastings first stepped into the Aurora Foundation as a broken woman seeking redemption. What began as an uncomfortable act of atonement had blossomed into a life of purpose, far richer and more fulfilling than the glittering world she had once inhabited. But the true measure of transformation isn't just in how much you've changed, it's in how you respond when your past catches up with you. And for Victoria, that moment was about to arrive. The Foundation's annual benefit gala was fast approaching, and this year it was different. Victoria wasn't just an organizer or mentor. She was now the program director, having earned the trust and admiration of the Foundation's board, the mentees, and the broader community. She had thrown herself into her work, expanding the mentorship program, securing new funding, and creating opportunities for young women who reminded her of who she used to be, lost, uncertain, and hungry for guidance. But there was one part of her past that still lingered in the back of her mind: Sophia and Keanu Reeves. Though they had given her a second chance and supported her quietly from the sidelines, Victoria had never fully felt she'd earned the forgiveness they offered. She had changed, yes, but a part of her still longed to face them one last time, not just to apologize again, but to show them the result of their kindness. And fate, it seemed, was ready to give her that chance. The day of the gala arrived, and the venue was a testament to the Foundation's growth under Victoria's leadership. The Los Angeles Botanical Gardens had been transformed into an enchanted evening wonderland. Twinkling fairy lights hung from the trees, casting a soft glow over the winding paths lined with flowers in full bloom. Round tables with white linens and simple, elegant centerpieces were scattered throughout the garden, surrounded by the hum of guests eager to support the cause. Victoria moved through the crowd with ease, dressed in a simple navy blue gown that complemented her natural beauty. She had long since abandoned the need for flashy jewelry or high-end labels. Now her confidence came from within, shining through her warm smile and the genuine connections she fostered with every guest. But as the night progressed, a familiar ripple of excitement moved through the crowd, causing Victoria to pause mid-conversation. "Did you hear? Keanu Reeves and his wife are here." Victoria's heart skipped a beat. She turned toward the entrance just in time to see Keanu Reeves and Sophia stepping into the garden, their presence as magnetic as ever. Keanu was dressed in a classic black suit, his hair slightly tousled in that effortlessly cool way he was known for. Sophia, ever the picture of understated elegance, wore a flowing emerald dress that shimmered under the lights, her warm smile lighting up the space more than any chandelier could. Victoria felt a mix of emotions, nervousness, gratitude, and a deep, abiding respect. This was her moment. The evening continued with speeches and performances, each highlighting the incredible work of the foundation. The mentees Victoria had guided over the past year shared their stories, bringing many in the audience to tears with their tales of resilience, hope, and newfound confidence. But the most significant moment of the night was yet to come. As the final speech concluded, the foundation's executive director took the stage, his voice echoing across the garden. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the achievements of our mentees, but also the people who make this work possible. There's one person in particular who has gone above and beyond, transforming not just this program, but herself in the process." Victoria felt her breath hitch in her throat. Her journey is a testament to the power of second chances, to the belief that we can all grow, change, and lead with kindness. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our program director, Victoria Hastings. The applause was immediate and heartfelt as Victoria made her way to the stage. But as she climbed the steps, her eyes were locked on Sophia and Keanu, seated near the front. Their expressions were soft, encouraging, and filled with a pride that Victoria hadn't expected, but deeply appreciated. Standing at the podium, Victoria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "A year ago, I stood in this very garden, not as the person you see today, but as someone who was lost. I had built my life around success, status, and appearances, believing that these things defined who I was. But I was wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I judged others based on superficial things, forgetting that kindness and respect are the true measures of a person's worth. It took a moment of deep humiliation and an incredible act of forgiveness to open my eyes to that truth." Her gaze shifted to Sophia and Keanu, her voice softening. "There are two people here tonight who changed my life with their grace and compassion. They didn't seek revenge or public shaming. Instead, they gave me the chance to be better, to grow, and to make a difference. To them, I owe more than words can express." The crowd followed her gaze, realizing the depth of the story unfolding before them. "But tonight isn't about my mistakes. It's about what we do after we've made them. It's about the young women in this program who have shown me that no matter where you come from or what you've been through, you have the power to rewrite your story." The audience erupted in applause, but Victoria's focus remained on Sophia and Keanu. She stepped down from the stage and made her way to their table, her heart pounding. As she approached, Sophia stood, her eyes glistening with emotion. Victoria stopped in front of her, her voice trembling but sincere. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for showing me that kindness isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength of all." Sophia smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "You showed us something too," she replied softly, "that people can change. And that kindness, when given freely, can create ripples we never imagined. Keanu stood beside her, extending his hand to Victoria. "You've come full circle," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "And we couldn't be prouder." Victoria felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she shook Keanu's hand, overwhelmed by the depth of their acceptance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, conversations, and heartfelt connections. Victoria felt lighter than she had in years, the burden of her past finally lifted by the acknowledgement of her growth and the love she had cultivated in its place. As the night drew to a close, Victoria stood at the edge of the garden, watching the twinkling lights reflected in the small pond nearby. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see Sophia standing there, a gentle smile on her face. "You've built something beautiful here," Sophia said, gesturing to the lively crowd behind them. Victoria nodded, her heart full. "I had good teachers," she replied, her eyes meeting Sophia's. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken understanding passing between them. "What's next for you?" Sophia asked softly. Victoria thought for a moment, then smiled. "More of this," she said simply. "More kindness, more growth, and maybe helping others find their own second chances." Sophia nodded, her expression one of quiet approval. "You're going to change a lot of lives, Victoria," she said. "You already have." As they turned to rejoin the festivities, Victoria felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had come full circle, but this wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning of a life defined not by past mistakes, but by the kindness that had transformed her and the kindness she would continue to spread. Because in the end, the greatest gift isn't receiving kindness, it's passing it on, creating a ripple effect that touches lives far beyond our own. And Victoria Hastings was ready to keep that ripple going.